I'm going to do a live. I haven't done a live for a long time. So I thought, I'll put this together. And this is going to be about a subject that a lot of people seem really interested in. And this is about digestion. How to improve your digestion without focusing so much on food. Because when most people talk about digestion and digestive problems, irritable bowel syndrome, etc., is that most people are focusing on the food solely. And the most common strategy is what they call like elimination diet. So you eliminate everything and then slowly introduce part by part and see which one triggers. So I'm going to kind of present different ways to approach improving digestion, okay? And this is based on Chinese medicine principles. And in Chinese medicine, we don't focus so much on, how to describe it, we focus on organ function. How strong is your organ function? We focus more on that aspect as opposed to ignoring organ function and just focusing on environmental influence. So the idea is if you build a strong internal environment with lots of qi and blood, your immune system gets strong, you've got a lot of qi. And that also means that, you're not fragile to the environment. You're not fragile to the external world. You don't want to be running away from the world. You want to be able to face the world, face all these different types of people. You want to be able to face all different types of environments, right? From cities to, the country, without being shaken by it. And how do you do that? You do that by building a strong internal system, right? That essentially the world kind of bounces off you. That's how I describe it. The world bounces off you. People bounce off you. It's not the environment. You don't want to become a victim to the environment. You want to build yourself in such a way where you're kind of the master of your experience, right? You're the master of your internal experience. And the world is just kind of like a show that's going on around you, right? So this is a much better way to view the world and to interact with the world from my perspective, or from how I understand it. And, this is what I do when I work with people, when I work with clients and stuff, is I'm trying to get into that place where their internal state is strong. And so they're less influenced by what's going on around them. Okay, so today, the structure of today, I'm guessing it's going to go about 20 minutes. It's like a mini class. And I'm going to go through 5 steps or 5 things you can do to improve your digestion without focusing on that food aspect. All right. So just a quick sort of story about how I got into Chinese med, because stories are kind of cool. So, when I was growing up, my mother was a nurse. She was in the cardiac unit, helping people who had heart attacks, heart surgery, stuff like that. And she was a nurse pretty much my whole youth. And I remember when I was a young boy, is that I was just observing, right? And mum, sort of her health kind of was declining. And I just remember as a young kid going, hang on, a hospital is a place where doctors work. It's a place where nurses work. It's where medicine is a central point of medicine. And if anyone knows about health, it's hospitals, right? But what I was seeing in my mother, maybe watching this, I love you, Mom, is that my mother's health was still declining, even though she was going to hospitals and working amongst doctors and stuff. And it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, if these people know so much about health, how come my mother's sick or my mother's not well? So, that really started me questioning a lot of sort of Western med stuff. I was like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. Maybe these doctors don't know health. So that really stirred me on. And it wasn't until sometime later, probably after watching Indiana Jones movies and stuff like that, that I really got interested in other cultures and especially older cultures like India and China and stuff like that. And when I hit about 17, 18 years old, I quit school. I thought school was ridiculous, and I just wasn't interested in it. The stuff they were teaching me was not, I didn't think it was useful. So I quit school and actually went traveling. I was like, I think there's more value in traveling, right? And thank God there was much more value in traveling. So I went to New Zealand, and then soon after I went to China. And China really blew me open. I was exposed to Taoism, Chinese medicine, Buddhism a lot more, but it also just opened me up to different ways of living, different ways of thinking, as a cultural, almost like a cultural opposite of Australia, white suburbia Australia. So that, really opened me up. And then when I came back to Australia, I started studying Chinese medicine and et cetera, et cetera. So that was many, many years ago now. I went to uni for the first time when I was 26 years old, and I'm glad I waited. I did a lot of traveling first and, got to learn about myself a bit more and observe different things and try lots of different things. And then I was like, yeah, this stuff is cool. So I'm really glad I had that time. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into Chinese med. And, when it comes to digestion, when I was younger, I had certain allergies to carrots, of all things. What else? I had like mild asthma. I was allergic to bee stings. So I had some allergies and some intolerances coming. But what seemed to happen is as I got into my 20s and I got into yoga and things like that, Chinese med, those things just disappeared. They just disappeared. I wasn't even trying to treat them. I think what I was doing at the time, I was just building my system in such a way that making the internal system healthier, that the imbalances, the intolerances, the mild asthma just corrected itself and they disappeared. And this is what can happen with most people, is that when you build the chi inside the system and get the system working better, a lot of the intolerances, a lot of the mild sort of diseases, irritable bowel syndrome, stuff like that, allergens, intolerances, they just tend to disappear when the system is working well. Okie dokie. So let's go into these five ways to improve your digestion without focusing on food. And at the end of this, I'll also open up to chats because I'm in multiple streams, multiple places at the moment, YouTube, Facebook, etc. And I've got access to a chat box. So near the end, I'll open up the chat box. And if you have any questions, just type that stuff in and I'll have a look and then I'll answer those. So number one way to improve your digestion is muscle strength training and activation. Why is that? So in Chinese medicine, there's a big link between the stomach, which is earth element, and spleen, and muscle tissue. What's the link? So one great way to describe it is that when you eat the food, it lands in your stomach, and spleen lands in your earth element, is that it fuels the muscles, right? So most of our energy gets from food. Most of the physical energy we get is from food. About at least 60% of it is food. You actually get a lot of energy from breath as well, probably 30-40% of it from breath, and also sunlight and the atmosphere. You can also get energy from there. So let's say 60% of your energy is from food. When you activate your muscle tissue or your extremities, it creates a massive chemical, biological, physiological response, which then tells the digestive system that it needs to work more efficiently. It needs to pull that food apart and send it to the muscles ASAP. So whenever you're using your muscles or whenever you're using your body, it's going to increase the physiological function of your stomach and spleen and your digestive system, simply because the body is sending signals to your digestion that it needs fuel, right? It needs fuel. So of course it's going to work better. If you just eat and then sit or don't do anything, there's no physiological alarm system, or there's no physiological response that's telling the system that it's critical that it needs energy from the stomach spleen. So what tends to happen is the food will sit in the stomach spleen and just be digested slowly. Because if you're not using your body, the only purpose of the food is to keep the basic functions alive, to keep your brain going, basic physiological functions. That's all that's required. So there's no urgency, there's no reason for the digestive system to be pumping, improving the efficiency of food metabolism, right? That's one way of looking at it. So you eat the food and then you've got to use the muscle to trigger the response. Or similarly, you do exercise first, trigger, and you exercise, and then half an hour later you're starving, right? There's a strong hunger response, and then you eat after that, because again, there's an alarm system going in the body that it needs fuel. So it's really a simple one, but I just wanted to explain the direct connection between physical exercise and improving digestion. If you use the body, it's going to increase digestive function because it requires efficiency to create more energy. Right. There's a lot of studies coming out now as well that's showing that if you walk after you eat, just even for 10 minutes, if you go for a walk after you eat, your blood glucose levels stabilize significantly. If you just eat and sit there and don't do anything, the blood glucose, the physiology is all out of whack. It takes a while for the blood glucose to stabilize. But if you eat, go for a walk, everything stabilizes much faster. So there's so many different ways you can do this, but the essence of it is when you do strength training or resistance training or move the body, it's going to improve function. I even started this new experiment recently. I'm going to take Chinese herbs. So take some herbs, like a small dose, in warm water. And then soon after, I use kettlebell swings. Right? These things, it's kind of my new thing. So a kettlebell really elevates your heart rate and gets many of the major muscle groups going really fast in like a minute. So I have the herb, and then I wait a little bit, like 5-10 minutes, and then I do like 100 kettlebell swings. And then, I can feel the herbs. I can feel it move into my body. It pumps into my circulation. I can feel it running through my arms. I can feel my muscles. And this is essentially what I'm talking about, is that you've got to activate the body so that the food moves to all the cells in the body. Right. So that's probably the simplest one, is to improve digestive function, is improve muscle activation. Okie dokie. Number 2. So number 2 is about having hot tea and warm water. So if you go to China, you'll notice that, well, can't go to China now these days, but before COVID and soon, hopefully, is that in China, they've got warm water everywhere. And they only drink warm water most of the time. And the main reason is your digestive inside your body. So your body's cooking at about 38 degrees Celsius, right? So your body's already hotter than the temperature of the atmosphere. And actually inside your digestion, it's probably much hotter than that. You've got different kinds of acid in there. You've got all sorts of things going on in there. So it's probably quite hot inside your belly. So when you drink warm water and warm tea, it merges or it absorbs much faster into your system. If you drink cold water, cold juices and all that sort of stuff, is that you're essentially putting it inside your body. It's 38 degrees. It's got to it's got to warm up those fluids before it can absorb. So it actually takes energy and slows your metabolism down when you're drinking cold water all the time, cold drinks. So if you want to make it easier for your digestion to work, is to drink warm water, warm drinks, and not these mega cups, like not these giant mugs sort of things and these big, massive Starbucks cups, but in smaller doses. Because if you stick a whole liter inside you, it's quite a lot of work and the organs get a bit taxed. So if you look at the Chinese cups, traditional Chinese cups, I don't have any here, but they're just little cups, right? Little cups with green tea, little hits. And you can actually have these when you're eating food, right? You have just little hits of green tea or little hits of warm water. And that heat also, especially in the morning, when you wake up, you put something hot in first because you want to turn the metabolism on. You want to get the heat moving. Metabolism essentially means fire. An easy way to look at it, metabolism equals fire. So to get the fire going, put little bits of warm water in there, especially in the morning. Okie dokie. So number 3. So there's emotional stress in the digestive system. This is the one I work with personally a lot with people. I use EFT and the letting go technique. And what I've found over the years is that when we have stress or trauma or extreme emotions, most of us don't process them. We don't know how to process them. And then, or often we move on to the next activity in our life because, we have to go to work the next day or, whatever's happening. So we just keep sort of powering through, that's the say. Just keep going, right? And so what this does is there's emotional stress and emotional trauma, and if it's not processed properly, it stores inside the tissues of the body or the subconscious mind, we could call it. The most common emotions, there's all sorts of ones in there, but there's things like anger, guilt, fear, shame, and desire, in the sense of desire really means wanting something to be different. And then that leads to like control, this idea of control. So a lot of people have these emotions stored inside their system. And in Chinese med, they actually found out that certain organs stored specific kind of emotions, right? So the liver tends to store and work with anger. The kidneys tend to store and work with fear. The lungs tend to store grief and sadness, right? And so on and so forth. So what I've noticed with a lot of people is that if you have most of us, any contraction in the belly is usually an emotion, some kind of emotion. Fear, worry, anxiety, all these things. And what seems to have happened over our lifetimes is that we accumulate these feelings. As children, we're kind of a bit more like clean slates. And as children, we haven't accumulated many trauma yet. Right? So we're running around, and we're able to sort of transition, and we're able to change and adapt quite easily. Younger people generally, obviously after certain childhood age, but teenagers and stuff tend to adapt much more easily than people that are a bit older, right? 30, 40 plus. And partly because this is that by the time we reach 30, 40 plus, is that we've accumulated a lot of things, accumulated a lot of emotions, coping mechanisms, beliefs, opinions, all that sort of stuff. So what we have to do in most of us is that we've got a huge amount of this stuff inside us. Huge amount of this stuff. Thousands and thousands and thousands of different feelings of anxiety, thousands and thousands of different feelings of stress, thousands and thousands of different triggers related to anger, thousands and thousands of different triggers related to shame, etc. And they all accumulate and store inside the digestive system, inside the mind. And no wonder the digestive system is out of whack. Right? You eat something, it doesn't work properly, or the organs just stop working properly. There's more pain in the body, the organs don't work as well, everything starts not working well. And what we've noticed over the time of working with EFT and such is that as you release these thousands and thousands of stored emotions that have been unprocessed, is that the body works better. The organ system heals, intolerances disappear, sensitivities tend to disappear, diseases disappear. Right? Because the physiology, the body system is working better, mainly because of circulation. The chi, the blood flows better through the system. What the emotions tend to do, even in anger, if we use anger, is anger actually stores and then it starts to squeeze the tissues. It squeezes, contracts the tissues. When you squeeze and contract the tissues, the blood's flow stops. When the blood flow stops, it breaks down, atrophy, and so many things. It starts coming undone. Right? But if you can get rid of the anger, for example, or the emotion, is that the blood flow returns to the organ system. When the blood flow returns, the organ works better. It really is that simple. So EFT, emotional freedom technique, is a very powerful way, just tapping on the body, clearing out these stored emotions from the body, and the system works better. Now, if you want to know more about this stuff, I've actually, you can work with me personally and I can actually help you personally. I've got plenty of videos on YouTube as well, which go into this sort of stuff with EFT. And I've also got like a program coming up. I run them every now and then, every few months I run a new program. This next one coming up is called 30 Days to Improve Your Digestion with EFT. And this is where we dive into things like anger. We dive into things like shame. We dive into things like shock that's been stored and is stuck inside the system. And I'll show you and I lead you in the process of how to get these things out of your system. So just check my website and stuff for that. Okie dokie, next one. How am I going for time? Oh, I've already reached my assumed time, but I'm going to keep rolling. So number 4 is what I call the breathing mechanics. So one way to improve your digestion is through your breathing mechanics. What does that mean? So the way your lungs, cardiovascular system, diaphragm, the way it's designed, for most people in the modern world, we aren't using it the way it's designed. We're probably using our lung system or cardiovascular system about 30% of its capacity, 40%. And so there's a huge part of our system that we're not using properly. And even the diaphragm, so the diaphragm, if you can see it on me, the diaphragm's like right there under the ribs. And that's where most people's tension is, right? So if you've got digestion problems, do you have any tension in this area? In the solar plexus, it's called in yoga. Most people are tight in the solar plexus. Part of that is the diaphragm. The diaphragm links the front of the body and it travels all the way and attaches to the back of the body as well. So it's a huge organ, actually. It's a huge organ. And when the diaphragm, so actually the way it works is, so this is your diaphragm, these are your lungs up here. Your diaphragm actually pulls down like this. So it pulls down into your belly, and that pressure air to come into your, your cavity. So it does this all the time. Most people, this thing is really tight. The diaphragm is really tight, and they're just breathing like this, like pumping the lungs up the top, and not pulling the muscle and everything down. Right. So when you're actually breathing properly, like with this full thing, the whole thing is actually oscillating. So when we breathe, especially in the belly and the whole system is correct posture, the spine is also waving. The organs are being pumped, like gently massaged, constantly, all throughout the day. But with incorrect breathing mechanics is that the lungs, everything gets stuck, the spine is kind of stuck, and then there's this sort of like light pumping in the lungs. Nothing's getting massaged, nothing's really moving, right? So the breathing mechanics is essential. How do you correct breathing mechanics? So it does take a little while, but I think probably the best place to learn breathing mechanics is in the yogas, pranayams. We learn it a little bit in Qigong, but I think the yogas have really got it nailed down. And my personal favorite at the moment is Nadi Shodhana. So that's one nostril breathing. You can look it up online. You breathe in one nostril, breathe out the other. Breathe in, swap. And what I've noticed is when you do this is that it starts correcting your posture. You'll just naturally start realigning yourself as you're breathing. You'll even notice like there's like a tightness like in different parts of your chest, which then you correct through the breathing. So everything starts to correct itself with particularly Nadi Shodhana. That's my recommendation. Yes. So there's many other things. There's also another device on the market called AeroFit, which I'm actually a huge fan of it. I don't have it with me, but it's a little device and you can breathe, you stick it in, you've got an app, and it gives you all these different kinds of breathing sequences, like square, like breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, hold, like different sequences. And this is essentially helping your lungs to get more to work better. And there's more and more studies as well coming out now that a precursor to a long, healthy life is your lung capacity. So how well you breathe, and in particular, how much air you can actually gather inside your lung cavity, is a sign of longevity. So very important, very important. And the other study, which is what linked to the first tip, was that muscles, if you've got some muscle tissue, as well as a large lung capacity, you now have, these are both excellent precursors to healthy longevity, because muscle tissue means you've got a lot of qi. Again, the food goes into your guts, you use the muscles, the food gets sent out to the muscles because the muscles need it, and then the qi kind of stores in the muscle tissue. Right. So muscle tissue is a good storage system. That's one way of looking at it. Muscles are great for storage of qi and blood. And then, of course, the lungs, you've got big breath, So there you go. And the last one, number 5, is you've got to give your system a break from eating. So one way to improve your digestion is just give it a break. The stomach takes about 4 hours to empty itself. So you have a snack or something, you got to wait 4 hours before you put something else in there, because when you put something in your mouth, it triggers a chemical reaction. Obviously, all these things are happening, And then if it's 2 hours later, then you put something else in your mouth, there's too many different chemical cycles going on all at one time. So often people struggle with digestion because they're putting in a weird mix of food and at weird times, because the body hasn't gone through a cycle of getting the food, processing it, releasing it, sending it throughout the body, eliminating it, eliminating it later, and then ready for the next dose. So wait at least 4 hours in between meals is a good way to start. The other one is to wait at least, this whole, what they call intermittent fasting, 18 hours, 24 hours. Don't eat for 24 hours or 18 hours. Just give your system a bit of a break, right? It's a very simple thing to do. Just stop eating for 18 hours. If you stop eating at 6 o'clock at night, so that's your last meal, 6 p.m., just don't eat again until 12 midday the next day. I even heard, I think a Sadhguru say that, so cancerous cells in the body, everyone's got cancerous cells in the body, right? To start with, it's not like you're completely clean and then you get invaded. No, it's like our body's already invaded with all different types of unhealthy cells. It's just whether you're feeding them and creating an environment for them to take over. Right. So we've got some cancerous cells in the body, and what cancerous cells like to do is they love to eat sugar. So if you keep eating things, especially carbohydrates, you tend to feed the cancerous cells, and then it can get out of control. Right? But if you just stop eating for like 18 hours or 24 hours, once every now and then, the cancerous cells are very greedy, but they die off quickly if you don't feed them, because they kind of need that quick hit. So if you don't eat for 18 hours, 24 hours, a lot of the cancerous cells, a lot of the bad cells that have been kind of taking over will just start dropping away. So just not eating for a while is one of the best things you can do for your digestion. So that's basically it. That's the 5 things. The first one is muscle activation. You got to use the body, and that'll increase the urgency for your system to work better, because muscles will call to the digestion to work better. And they will work better. There's always a test you can do, is do some strength training before you eat. Of course, wait a little bit after exercise and then eat, and see if the food goes down, fairly easily, compared to if you don't do any exercise and then eat, and see how much the food just sits there. Okay. Number 2 was hot, warm water, small doses of it. Number 3, there's emotional stress that's stored in the system, stored in the digestive system in particular. Unprocessed anger, unprocessed resentments, guilt, shame, desire, all sorts of nasty things. And these tend to have accumulated. The older we get and we don't process this stuff, the older we get, they tend to have more accumulated things, thousands and thousands of these things, right? So you got to knock those things out of you. You got to release them out of your system with EFT or whatever works for you. Breathing mechanics, you got to get your breathing working better. Pranayama, various exercises, the AeroFit, whatever it takes. Increasing your lung capacity will improve your chance of living well for a longer period of time. Number 5, give your system a break. And as well as that, just to add to that is, eating at similar times every day tends to work out better as well, because the body likes routine. The stomach and spleen element the earth element loves routines. Routines give a sense of stability, of groundedness. The body kind of likes the routines. It likes to know what's coming up. And so if you eat at the same time every day, let's say 9 a.m., you eat your breakfast. When that time starts coming around, your body is already preparing itself. Chemistry, all the stuff inside is already getting ready for the 9 p.m. meal. But if you're eating at really weird times all the time, the body has no idea what's going on. It's unprepared, it's ungrounded, things like that. So routines tends to really help the stomach as well, because the body can prepare itself chemically and all those wonderful things. Okie dokie. So I think that's it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the chat, see if there's any questions that have popped up. See if it's working. Well, maybe my system is not working so well. My chat box doesn't seem to be up as I thought it was, but that's okay. I can always take your questions down later and maybe make another video, answer those questions, no problemo. So anyway, have a beautiful day. Hopefully it's helpful. 5 ways to improve your digestion without focusing so much on the food. My name is Michael, signing off from Chiang Mai. All the best. Namaste.